I've started a new channel called Lanila Tales. Please subscribe and watch my best stories there. Link is in the description. The universe didn't pause when Mira Rylan screamed. It didn't mourn when the plasma blade touched her throat. It just kept spinning as if nothing had happened. That was the worst part. The day the sky turned black, people would later say it started with a funeral and ended with a promise of blood. Mira stood in the small farming valley of Eden 3, surrounded by neighbors clutching faded flowers and broken hopes. They had gathered to mourn her husband, Captain Jax Rylan, a war hero whose ship was reported destroyed in the Tauron Belt. His coffin was empty, symbolic, a polished piece of wood more for the village's comfort than her own. Mira wasn't crying. She had cried all her tears weeks ago. Now she stood straight, her dark hair tied back, her eyes sharp despite the sorrow sitting heavy in her chest. She whispered farewell to the wind, hoping it carried the words to wherever Jax's soul drifted. That was when the sky trembled. A sound like the universe cracking open roared overhead. People gasped and scattered as 3 massive Varnak warships descended. Their hulls were jagged metal, like claws tearing through clouds. Engines rumbled like angry gods awakening. Dirt and flower petals swirled in the air. Children screamed. Elders fell to their knees in prayer. Mira didn't move. The lead ship landed in the center of the village square, crushing benches and memorial stones beneath its weight. A ramp hissed open. Out marched soldiers taller than any human, clad in obsidian armor. Their faces were hidden behind red-lit helmets. At the front strode Lord Krygar, commander of the Varnak warlords. He was decorated in silver spikes and bore a staff tipped with a glowing crimson crystal. His voice echoed coldly through a translator device. Citizens of Eden 3, kneel and surrender tribute, or kneel and surrender blood. Most villagers dropped instantly. Some trembled. Mira remained standing. Lord Krygar's helmet turned toward her. You defy me. My husband died defending people from monsters like you, she said. I will not kneel. Krygar's claws tightened around his staff. Mira's friend Rhea whispered urgently, Mira, please don't. But Mira stepped forward, chin raised. Her heart thundered but her eyes held no fear. If death was coming, she would meet it standing. So be it, Krygar said. He didn't shout. He didn't roar. He simply moved. A flash of red light. A hiss of burning air. Mira's body crumpled to the ground. A scream pierced the valley, not from her, but from dozens of throats at once. Rhea collapsed beside her, sobbing. The villagers were frozen between terror and disbelief. Mira Rylan, who had once laughed at rainstorms and scolded war generals, was gone. But not everything was silent. Near the funeral platform sat a small metal pod no bigger than a backpack, half buried in the dirt. No one had noticed it before. Inside, a creature stirred. A honey badger. Slightly scarred, with a metallic collar blinking green. The pod had fallen from the sky minutes earlier, unnoticed amidst chaos. The badger blinked once, twice, sniffed the air, and glared at the towering aliens like it was personally offended by their existence. The aliens ignored it. Mistake number 1. Krygar raised his staff again. Let this be a lesson. Resistance is death. Our empire does not negotiate. Suddenly, a crackle of static burst through every comms screen and hollow device in the square. Even Krygar's staff glitched for a second. A voice came through, rough, broken, full of rage and disbelief. This is Captain Jax Rylan. And if you're hearing this, someone just made a very big mistake. Heads snapped toward the sky. Farmers dropped their tools. Alien soldiers stiffened. Rhea pressed a hand to her mouth. Jax's voice continued, deeper now, shaking with fury. I watched you execute my wife. I don't know how I survived the battle. I don't know how I made it back. But I do know this. A pause. Then, quiet and lethal. I'm coming for you. And I'm bringing something worse than death. The message ended. Silence followed. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Lord Krygar turned slowly to his soldiers. Find him. Bring me his head. Above them, the clouds parted for just a moment. A starship's silhouette flashed in the distance before vanishing behind the mountains. And down below, the honey badger stepped out of the pod, nose twitching, eyes full of murder. No one knew it yet, but the war for Eden 3 had just begun. And it would not be fought by armies or generals. It would be fought by a furious husband, a missing wife, and a small creature that feared nothing and cared even less. The universe didn't pause when Mira fell. But it would soon learn to run. The ruins of the funeral still smoldered when rumors began to crawl through the village like frightened shadows. Some said Mira had blinked before she fell. Others swore her body moved after the aliens dragged it away. No one wanted to believe she was truly gone. Hope was a dangerous thing under Varnock occupation, but people clung to it the way drowning men cling to driftwood. The Varnock soldiers marched through the streets with cold precision, collecting food, supplies, even children for labor camps. They set up command posts in barns and hung banners bearing the crimson sigil of Lord Krygor. But beneath the fear, something else simmered. The message from Jax Rylan echoed in every whispered conversation. He was alive. And he was coming. Late that night, a strange humming filled the air. The stars above shimmered as a ship broke atmosphere, streaking across the sky like a burning comet. Varnock's sirens blared. Aliens scrambled to their stations. Villagers dove under carts and inside cupboards. The ship did not land gracefully. It shot into the ground just beyond the wheat fields, sending dust clouds rolling like waves. The hull was scorched, one engine sparking wildly, half the exterior held together by hope and questionable welding. The ramp lowered with a screech of metal that made everyone wince. Captain Jax Rylan stepped out. He looked nothing like the clean-shaven officer people remembered. His beard was uneven, his jacket burned in places, his left arm wrapped in makeshift bandages. His eyes, however, were the same cold steel of a man who had nothing left to lose. In his right hand he held a plasma pistol. In his left, the leash attached to something small, furry, and radiating pure chaos. The honey badger from the pod padded forward, claws scraping the ramp. Its metallic collar flickered with electric sparks and a tiny tag engraved with one word: chaos. The villagers stared. The badger stared back. A small boy whispered, "Is it friendly?" Jax answered without looking, "Only if you are not made of meat." The boy quietly stepped behind his mother. Varnock patrols arrived, plasma rifles raised. Their commander barked something in his native language, demanding surrender. Jax did not respond verbally. Instead, he unclipped the leash. Chaos launched forward like a furry missile. The first alien did not even scream before the badger latched onto its armored leg, biting through metal with impossible strength. Plasma shots fired, but the creature twisted, snarled, and kept coming. One alien tried to kick it. Chaos bit his boot. And his toe. Possibly also his soul. By the time the patrol retreated in panic, 2 helmets were dented, 1 rifle was in pieces, and Chaos was proudly carrying a severed gauntlet like a trophy. Jax knelt beside the creature, scratched its head, and whispered something that sounded like good murder. The villagers gathered cautiously. Rhea stepped forward, tears shining in her eyes. "Jax," she whispered. She tried to speak more, but words broke against her grief. He only nodded, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the scorched ground where Mira had fallen. "Show me," he said. They led him to the execution site. Fresh dirt marked where Mira had collapsed, but her body was gone. Jax dropped to his knees, palms pressed into the soil. The world quieted around him. "They took her," Rhea said softly. "After you sent the message, the aliens carried her away. They said no remains should remain as inspiration for rebellion. Some say she still breathes. They say her body was preserved." Jax closed his eyes. A storm gathered behind his ribs. He stood. "Where are they holding her?" Rhea hesitated, glancing around nervously. "There is talk of a secret facility. They call it the Neural Spire. It is said they use human minds to power their weapons. Some believe she is there." Jax turned toward the distant mountains where the alien mothership loomed like a dark moon. "Then that is where I go." Another voice spoke up. It was old Elias, the village blacksmith. You cannot storm a Varnak fortress alone. Jax gave a humorless half-smile. I am not alone. He looked at Chaos, who was currently chewing on an alien power cell as if it were a snack. But before he could take another step, a rebel scout emerged from the forest edge. She wore a hood of woven leaves and carried a bow carved from crystalwood. You are Captain Ryland? She asked. He nodded. Then follow me. There are things you must know. The Resistance has been waiting for someone like you. Jax hesitated only a moment before following her down a hidden path. Chaos trotted behind, dragging a stolen plasma grenade. The villagers watched in silence as he disappeared into the shadows of the forest. Some whispered prayers. Others whispered legends. The path led deep beneath the roots of glowing silver trees. A hidden entrance opened into vast caverns lit by bioluminescent vines. There, deep underground, humans, former soldiers, even deserters from alien factions planned in secrecy. Maps littered tables. Strange devices hummed softly. And in the center lay a single broken Varnak datapad. Jax lifted it. The last video recorded on it flickered to life. Mira. Bruised, restrained, but alive. Her voice was weak yet steady. If you find this, Jax, do not do something stupid. Do not come FO. The recording cut to static. Jax stood very still. His voice was barely a whisper. Prepare everything. We are going to get her back. A rebel muttered. With what army? Jax glanced at Chaos, now trying to eat the table. With that, he said. Above ground, Lord Krygor stared at the sky, a single thought burning in his mind. The human was back. And something else had come with him. The wind carried a faint sound, half growl, half war cry. Chaos hungered. Underground beneath the glowing silver forests, whispers moved faster than footsteps. Word spread that Captain Jax Ryland had arrived with his impossible pet, and that his wife might still be alive. Hope and fear collided in the dim-lit caverns where the Resistance had carved out a hidden city. Bioluminescent roots curled along stone ceilings, casting soft blue light across walkways, weapons racks, and tired faces. Jax followed the scout through a winding tunnel until the space opened into a vast chamber alive with murmured conversations and the clanking of makeshift machinery. Chaos the honey badger padded beside him, dragging the torn alien gauntlet it still refused to relinquish. Every time someone stared too long, the creature bared its teeth as if it were considering new chewable options. The Resistance leader emerged from the shadows. A tall woman with silver hair braided down her back and a scar across her cheek, she introduced herself simply as Arya. Her voice was calm steel when she spoke. We are the last free humans of Aiden III and a few sympathetic alien defectors. We fight, we hide, and sometimes we lose more than we can bear. But if what you bring is real, if Mira still lives inside Varnak hands, then everything changes. Jax nodded, though his jaw was tight. I saw her. The rebels found a recording. She is alive somewhere in their neural spire. Arya motioned them toward a table carved from crystallized roots. Spread across it was a map of the Varnak mothership hovering above the distant mountains. Thin red lines marked guard routes, ventilation shafts, and a pulsing core at its center labeled only with a Varnak symbol meaning Mind Forge. Arya pointed. This is where they connect harvested minds. They use them to power their superweapon. The weapon they plan to unleash on the remaining colonies. If Mira is in there, she is not just a prisoner. She is now a part of the machine. Jax stared at the map. Something dark and dangerous moved in his eyes. Can she be pulled out alive? Arya hesitated. We do not know. No one taken into the neural spire has returned. Most souls scream until they go silent. But then she glanced at Jax, saw the storm there, and added softly, but Mira Ryland was never most people. Chaos climbed onto the table, stepping on the map, sniffed the drawn guards, then attempted to bite off a corner of the spire drawing. Arya pulled the map away just in time. Through winding tunnels, the rebels led Jax to a hidden barracks. Crates of stolen alien weapons sat stacked beside sharpening stones and half-assembled explosive devices. Arya paused by a locked chamber. This is something you must see. Inside, under flickering lights, stood former Varnock scientist Velayer, small and gray-skinned, eyes sunken from guilt and insomnia. He trembled when Jax entered. "I know what they did to your wife," he said softly. "I helped design the neural core. I am trying to undo it." Jax stepped closer, tensing. Velayer raised both hands. "I defected when I realized what Krygor planned. He wants to link thousands of human minds to one consciousness. A living weapon. But your wife fights it. She is resisting the system. It is damaging the core." Jax felt something burn in his chest. "She is fighting them. Even like that?" Velayer nodded weakly. "She slows them. She breaks the code. Every hour she stays alive, she costs them power. Krygor grows impatient. If she continues, he will silence her permanently." The room fell still. Arya turned to Jax. "We move soon. But we need an edge. Something to distract or weaken their systems." As if on cue, Chaos yanked open a crate, revealing stolen alien battery cells, then proceeded to urinate on them. Sparks flew. A small explosion. Everyone jumped. Someone muttered, "That creature is either death or a miracle." Jax simply said, "Both." Planning began through the night. Silent infiltration routes were traced from underground tunnels to the mountain range beneath the mothership. Scouts mapped guard rotations. Saboteurs prepared EMP charges. And through it all, Jax remained focused, memorizing every corridor, every risk, every piece of the plan that led him to Mira. Chaos wandered the cavern, terrorizing anyone holding food or shiny objects. At one point it stole a rebel boot, then a plasma dagger, then an entire basket of bread. Before dawn, Arya called for quiet. "There is one more thing." She led them deeper underground, into a cavern where enormous tree roots pulsed with faint energy. In the center lay an ancient stone platform with markings older than any human language. Velayer stepped forward. "These are resonance stones. They can sync minds temporarily. If you reach Mira, you could anchor her consciousness to yours and pull her out of the neural spire without killing her." But this came with a warning. If he failed, both their minds could shatter. Jax stepped onto the stone without hesitation. "What do I need to do?" Velayer explained. A neural band would be placed on his temple. When near Mira during the rescue, he must focus on one memory strong enough to bind her to reality. Jax knew instantly which memory. Mira laughing as rain soaked their uniforms during their wedding on a forgotten outpost, promising each other war would not take their laughter. As rebels prepared supplies, Arya approached quietly. "You understand that this mission may not just save her. It might ignite the end of Varnock rule. Are you ready to carry that weight?" Jax looked at her, eyes tired yet unwavering. "I came here for her. But if saving her means saving everyone, then I carry it." Chaos jumped onto a crate nearby, wearing someone's helmet on its head, visor cracked. Jax added dryly, "And so does he." As morning approached, Jax stood at the cavern's entrance overlooking the sleeping rebellion. He felt the ground hum with distant alien machinery above. Rhea approached softly. She handed him Myra's necklace, a small silver ring tied to a cord. "She would want you to have this." He closed his hand around it. "Thank you." The path ahead was full of death and fire, but his steps were steady. Above, the Varnock mothership loomed like a predator watching its prey. Beneath it, an army of rebels awoke with new purpose. And in the center of it all, a cybernetic honey badger stretched, yawned, and looked genuinely excited to choose something explosive. The war for Mira had begun, and soon the galaxy would learn exactly what desperation, love, and one very angry honey badger could do. The morning they left the underground city, a heavy silence followed them through the tunnels. Jax walked at the front, Myra's necklace clenched in his hand, the memory of her voice echoing in his mind like a fragile thread tying him to purpose. Behind him moved a small strike team, Arya with her crystalwood bow and silent confidence, Velayer clutching a case filled with neural disruptors, and 3 rebels armed with stolen Varnock rifles. And trotting along like a furry omen of disaster was Chaos, eyes gleaming with the kind of excitement only impending violence could bring. The tunnels eventually opened to the mountainside beneath the massive alien mothership. It hovered above the cliffs like a metal nightmare, engines pulsing with blood-red light, casting long shadows over the forests below. The air tasted of ozone and fear. Arya whispered, "No turning back now." Jax replied, "I'd burn that bridge the moment they touched her." They approached using forged Varnak access codes and a stolen hover hauler loaded with crates. Velair, disguised in a tattered Varnak scientist coat, stepped forward at the first checkpoint, antennae twitching nervously beneath his hood. He presented an identity crystal. The alien guard scanned it, then frowned suspiciously at Chaos, who sat inside one of the crates like a badly disguised fruit. Velair cleared his throat and said, "Experimental creature transport. Classified by order of Lord Krygor." The guard leaned closer. Chaos stared back with murderous curiosity. There was a long pause. Then the guard shrugged and waved them through. Mistake number 2. Inside the mothership, the walls pulsed faintly like living metal veins. Lights flickered down long, curving corridors. The air vibrated with the distant hum of reactors and the low drone of alien chants. Velair guided them past patrols, through maintenance tunnels and freight lifts. Jax kept his voice low as he asked, "How far to the Neural Spire?" Velair answered, 3 more levels. "But there is something you must know. Your wife, she is not just connected to the weapon. She is stabilizing it. Without her, it will overload." Jax felt his pulse thud. "Then we overload it after she is free." Chaos slipped away. One moment it was in the crate. The next, a distant shriek echoed down a hallway. Arya closed her eyes and muttered, "That thing is going to eat a warship." Jax gritted his teeth but didn't go after it. He trusted the creature more than half the rebels he had fought beside in the past. They descended into the heart of the ship, where the air grew colder. The walls shimmered with streams of alien code. The Neural Spire rose before them, a towering cylindrical chamber filled with suspended pods, each containing a mindless human or alien, wires burrowing into their skulls. At the center, elevated above a glowing abyss of energy, was Mira. She hung in a crystalline frame, tubes and shimmering fibers attached to her temples, spine, and wrists. Her eyes were closed, lips parted slightly as if whispering secrets into the machine. Jax's breath caught, a mix of relief and horror. Velair activated the neuroband and pressed it into Jax's hand. "You must reach her mind. Bring her back. But if she fights you, you must pull harder. Or lose yourself." Jax nodded, eyes fixed on Mira. Arya positioned the rebels around the chamber. "If alarms sound, we hold them off. You get her." A low rumble shook the floor. Then another. Velair checked a monitor and whispered, "The core is unstable. She is doing it intentionally. She is trying to destroy it from inside." Jax stepped onto the platform. His heart pounded as he pressed the neuroband to his temple and reached for her hand. The world dissolved. He was no longer standing on metal. He was inside a storm of memories. Voices, screams, Myra's laughter echoing through fractured glass. He saw her standing in rain. He saw her reaching for him. But when he stepped closer, she turned, eyes glowing with alien light. "You cannot save me, Jax. If you pull me out, the weapon will not die. It will fire on the colonies. I have to end it here." Jax reached for her. "I did not crawl through fire and death to watch you burn alone." She shook her head. "If I stay, I die. If I leave, millions die. Choose." Outside, alarms blared. Varnak soldiers flooded the chamber. Arya loosed arrows that exploded on impact. Plasma bolts lit the air. Chaos burst through a ventilation shaft wearing an alien helm and dragging a severed power cable in its teeth. The creature hurled itself at the nearest soldier like an angry meteor with fur. Velair shouted over the noise, "The core is going critical. You have minutes." Jax stood trembling, sweat pouring down his temple. In the mindscape, he stepped forward, took Myra's hand, and placed the necklace in it. "We do this together. Or not at all." Her voice was a whisper. "I am afraid." He answered, "So am I. That is why we hold on." He dragged her toward the memory of rain, toward the sound of laughter and life. The machine screamed as if alive. Sparks erupted from the neural spire. Arya yelled, "Jax!" Now! The connection snapped. Jax gasped as reality returned. Mira collapsed into his arms, weak but breathing. "Disconnect her fully," Velair cried. "Now!" Jax tore the cables free. The lights in the chamber flickered violently. Lord Krygor's voice roared through the speakers. "You dare defy the Varnok? I will tear your world apart." Jax lifted Mira, her weight barely more than a feather. She whispered, "You came?" He smiled faintly. "I brought chaos too." As if summoned, chaos leapt onto the control console and bit through a glowing conduit. The lights exploded. The ship groaned. Arya shouted to the rebels, "Fall back." Now! The floor shook as the core began to overload. Jax ran, Mira in his arms, chaos at his heels carrying a stolen detonator for no apparent reason. Behind them, alarms howled and flames erupted along the walls. Varnok soldiers poured in from all sides. Arya and the rebels fired relentlessly, buying seconds at the cost of blood. Jax did not look back. The only thing that mattered was the heartbeat he felt against his chest. The mothership trembled like a dying beast. Fire and lightning danced across the ceiling. And deep within it, a war had been ignited that could not be undone. Sirens screamed through the corridors as the mothership convulsed like a dying beast. Jax sprinted down the trembling metal walkway with Mira in his arms, her breath weak but steady against his chest. Chaos bounded beside him, dragging a sparking alien power conduit in its jaws as if it were a beloved chew toy. Explosions echoed from distant halls. Rebel fighters fell back in scattered groups, firing stolen weapons while Arya shouted commands to cover the retreat. Mira opened her eyes slightly, her voice barely a whisper. "You should have left me." Jax tightened his grip. Not even death gets to make that decision. As they rounded a corner, plasma bolts scorched the walls. Varnok soldiers poured in from both sides, snarling in their native tongue. Arya loosed an energy arrow that exploded upon impact, sending 2 soldiers crashing into a railing. The team scrambled into a maintenance lift, and the doors slid shut just as another barrage of fire seared past. The lift jerked and ascended, humming shakily. Velair checked the readings on a flickering device. "The core is destabilizing. If the overload reaches critical mass, this ship will turn into a miniature sun." Jax asked. "How long do we have?" Velair replied, "Minutes? Maybe less." Chaos sneezed sparks. The lift doors opened to the upper deck, where windows revealed the world outside turning crimson with dawn. Eden 3 stretched below, forests and rivers bathed in alien shadows. Alarms continued to wail as they ran across a wide bridge that connected to a hangar bay. Rebel groups were already boarding stolen shuttles. Arya pointed. "We escaped through Dock 7. Once we're clear, we trigger the charges and let this monster fall." But before they could reach the hangar, the doors at the far end groaned open with a sound like grinding bones. Lord Krygor stepped through. His silver-spiked armor glinted under the red emergency lights. His eyes burned with cold fury behind a cracked helmet. In one hand he held a massive plasma blade, the same kind that had ended Myra's life in the village. His voice thundered across the bridge. "You stole my weapon. You stole my victory. Now I take everything from you." Jax laid Mira gently against a support pillar. "Stay with me," he whispered. She reached for his hand weakly. "Finish this." He stood, lifting a Varnok rifle, but Krygor struck it aside with a single swing, sending it clattering across the floor. "Fight me as a warrior, human. Or die as a coward." Jax didn't hesitate. He drew his plasma knife and charged. Their blades clashed in a spray of sparks. Each strike shook his bones. Krygor fought like a force of nature, relentless and precise. Still, Jax matched him, fueled by grief and fury. Around them, the bridge shook violently as explosions rippled through the ship. Velair shouted to Arya over the commotion. "The core is at 90%. If we don't leave now, we die here." Arya looked to Jax but stayed where she was, bow raised, keeping soldiers at bay. Mira forced herself upright despite the pain burning through her veins. Her voice cut through the chaos. hoarse but steady. Krygor. You may take my body, but you will never conquer my world. He glanced at her, and that distraction was enough. Jax lunged, driving his blade into a gap in Krygor's armor. The alien roared, striking Jax across the chest and sending him crashing to the floor. Blood trickled from Jax's lip. Krygor ripped the blade free and raised his sword for the killing blow. A blur of black and white fur shot past. Chaos leapt onto Krygor's face with a battle cry that sounded oddly like offended squeaking. The honey badger clawed at his helmet, biting wires and exposed flesh. Krygor staggered, howling. Jax seized his chance, grabbed a fallen plasma spear, and drove it through the warlord's chest. The weapon crackled, blazing through armor and bone. Krygor fell to one knee, then collapsed, his body sparking and still. The bridge shook violently. Velair screamed, core at 99%. It's going to blow. Jax scooped up Mira. Arya grabbed Chaos by the scruff, who was still chewing Krygor's armor. They ran, feet pounding metal. Behind them, fire swallowed the corridor. They burst into the hangar where the last shuttle waited, engines screaming to launch. Rebels waved them aboard. As the shuttle rose, the mothership's core erupted in blinding light. The shockwave hurled the shuttle into the sky, alarms blaring. Through the viewport, the mothership bloated with red energy, then shattered like glass. Pieces of burning metal rained over the mountains. A roaring gale of fire swept across the clouds. Eden 3 trembled as the sky ignited. Jax held Mira close, shielding her as the shuttle rocked violently. Then silence. The flames faded. The wreckage of the mothership fell like dying stars, crashing into rivers and forests below. The sky slowly cleared to pale morning blue. Mira stirred in his arms, eyes heavy but alive. Did we win? She whispered. Jax managed a tired smile. With some help from a small demon. Chaos sat across the cabin, covered in alien blood and happily eating part of Krygor's helmet. Arya slumped into a seat, breathing hard. Velair wiped tears from his eyes. We did more than win. We ended a reign. As the shuttle descended toward the freed village, people gathered in astonishment. The crimson banners of the Varnock were torn down. Children pointed at the sky still streaked with smoke. The shuttle landed on scorched earth where flower petals and ashes still mingled. Jax stepped down, carrying Mira. A hush fell over the crowd. Then Rhea stepped forward, tears streaming, and whispered, "Welcome home." Chaos trotted off the shuttle, proudly dragging Krygor's severed armored glove like a victorious trophy. For the first time since the funeral, the village bells rang. Not for mourning, but for hope. The war was not yet over, but its tide had changed. And somewhere in the ruins of a shattered empire, the legend of the honey badger who defied aliens was born, told in whispers and laughter around every campfire. Smoke still drifted like ghosts across the sky where the mothership had fallen, its burning remains scattered across distant mountains. Eden 3 was quiet in a way it hadn't been for months. The kind of silence that follows storms, heavy but full of breath. The villagers gathered in the square that had once been a place of mourning. Now it was a place of hesitant hope. Mira lay on a stretcher near the fountain, her eyes open, her skin pale but warm. Healers worked beside her, hands glowing faintly with herbal pastes and salvaged alien medical tech. Jax sat beside her, covered in bruises and soot, his fingers wrapped around hers as though letting go would make everything vanish like smoke. She whispered, "You look terrible." He laughed softly, his voice rough. "You should see the other guy." Chaos sat nearby, proudly chewing on a piece of alien armor while small children watched it with a mix of fascination and justified concern. People began rebuilding. Broken fences were hammered into place. The charred remains of the funeral platform were cleared away. Farmers picked up fallen tools, soldiers stacked captured weapons into storage, and someone started boiling a massive pot of soup in the center of the village. Peace, real peace, began to tentatively stretch its limbs. But peace never lasts long, especially when villains are stubborn. Across the hills, a low rumble shook the ground. A blackened Varnock crawler tank rolled forward, its metal scorched from the mothership's destruction. On top of it stood a battered alien captain holding a cracked banner. Behind him, a swarm of Varnak drones lifted into the air, wings buzzing like a storm of angry insects. Krygor may have fallen, but his forces were not finished. Villagers panicked, some retreating, others preparing to fight again with whatever tools they had left. Jack stood, holding Myra's hand until she whispered, "Go. I will still be here." He kissed her forehead, stood, and shouted for everyone to take cover. Arya appeared at his side, bow in hand, arrows glowing. Valere, now wearing a dented helmet far too large for his head, muttered, "This is a very poor time for heroics." Chaos just snorted, dropped the piece of armor, and charged straight at the nearest drone like it owed him money. The battle erupted like wildfire. Plasma blasts lit the morning air. Arya fired arrow after arrow, each one striking with deadly precision. Valere overloaded drone circuits with stolen Varnak devices. Jax fought with a scavenged energy blade, his movements slower than before but every strike fueled by love and rage. Drones swooped down in swarms, but Chaos leapt onto one, bit through its wing, and rode it into another like some furry harbinger of insanity. Villagers fought beside them, wielding pitchforks and stolen rifles. But there were too many drones, too many soldiers. The crawler tank moved forward, its cannon charging for a final blast aimed directly at the healing tents and Mira. Mira, barely standing, pushed herself upright with trembling legs. She reached into the memories of the neural spire, recalling the alien systems she had fought against from within. She closed her eyes, focused, and whispered through clenched teeth. "Systems override. Neural code." Her voice faltered, but her will did not. The drones in the air jerked mid-flight. Some spiraled, others halted completely. The crawler tank's cannon flickered and shut down, sparks bursting from its sides. The alien captain stared in disbelief as his army shuddered to a halt. Myra's legs buckled, but Jax caught her before she fell. He held her close. "You're still saving the world, even half-conscious." She managed a tired smile. "Old habits." The tank commander roared and charged with a blade, refusing to accept defeat. Jax stepped forward, but Chaos got there first, launching at the alien's face like a small furious meteor. The commander went down in a tangle of limbs, claws, and bad decisions. With their leader fallen and their weapons silent, the remaining Varnak soldiers dropped to their knees. Some fled into the forests. Some surrendered. The drones fell from the sky like dying stars. The village let out a collective breath. The war was over, not just in fire, but in something quieter. Something certain. Days passed. The wreckage was cleared. The banners of the Varnak were burned, their ashes scattered. A council formed, with Arya representing the resistance, Valere advising on alien technology, and Jax and Mira guiding the rebuilding of Eden 3. Chaos was given no official role, mostly because no one wanted to give it legal authority over anything that could explode. One morning, weeks later, as the sun rose gently over rebuilt houses and fields growing again, Jax stood outside a small wooden building. A hand-painted sign hung over the door. Badger and Brew. Inside, villagers sat around handmade tables, drinking steaming cups of coffee and laughing for the first time in months. Mira sat behind the counter, bandages gone, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked at Jax and said, "So this is your dream now, a cafe?" Jax shrugged. "Peace needs coffee. And fewer plasma guns." Chaos lay under a table, wearing a small apron someone had forced onto it, and growling softly at the pastry jar. Children ran past the window, shouting and playing. Farmers spoke about crops instead of casualties. At night, the stars above Eden 3 were just stars again, not warships. Mira leaned on Jax's shoulder and whispered, "Do you think it's finally over?" He wrapped his arm around her. "For now. And if it isn't, we'll face it. Together." A muffled boom echoed outside. They both turned. Chaos had found a plasma grenade again. Jax groaned, Mira laughed for the first time in so long, and life, with all its mess and madness, continued on. In the end, the universe did not pause for their grief. But it made space for their hope. And that was enough.